If everyone made $203,040 per hour, wouldn't everything just be more expensive? It depends. It's a very non-trivial question. Research shows that your bare-bones Econ 101 type answers aren't always right. In this particular case, it seems to come down to whether wages are being set competitively or not. In a lot of areas, businesses can act like a monopsony, and min-wage laws don't lead to less employment or higher prices. Monopsony is similar to monopoly, except on the supply side. Similar idea, though they have enough bargaining power that they can force employees to take compensation below what they'd get in a competitive market. There have been studies in areas that have raised the minimum wage. So it's not just theory. There's actual hard data. In areas where wages are competitive, it does what you'd expect. The breakpoint is region-specific, but generally it seems to be you can raise the min wage to 50% of the median wage of the area, without too many negative effects. Wouldn't the market adjust so that the minimum wage worker's salary has the same buying power it currently has? Just all the numbers would go up? It's worth keeping in mind that not all numbers are going up. Minimum wages are effectively redistribution. It's taking money away from employers. Whether prices goes up depends on how effectively employers can claw it back, which is not always 100%. That is what was said about introducing a minimum wage. In Britain at least. And it didn't happen. In Australia the minimum wage is well above $20 an hour and prices for goods are very comparable to the US. Except for chips and cigarettes, they are very heavily taxed though. And tipping culture doesn't exist, so what you see is always what you pay. No one can perfectly predict inflation. It's a tough skill predicting anything. We do know CEO wages have risen faster than minimum wage by about 950% in the past 40 years, while the average worker's wage has risen by about 10%. People are making more money now. It's just not most people. Source: https www.epa.org/publication/SEA-compensation 2018/. There is nothing to say price gouging couldn't happen. Look at over COVID. Or eggs. And with such monopolies in so many areas, it's not that hard for companies to do without strict regulation, which very few economies have. What might at least happen regardless is a closing off the wage gap. I personally would like to see a law saying the highest paid person in a company can only earn 10 or 20 or any number you fancy, really. X the lowest paid person. But it's not been tested, and I'm not an economist, so I could be totally wrong on how well it would work. Maybe lots of stuff would just get outsourced. Maybe we'd all be a lot more equal. No. Or at least, it doesn't have to. Setting small businesses aside for a moment, Target made $712 million of profit in one quarter of the 2022 fiscal year. It's important that we understand profit is money after all expenses are paid. Target has about 400,000 employees. Let's say 250,000 are hourly workers. Disclaimer: I'm making that number up. So the choice then is, do we raise pay for the portion of those hourly workers making minimum wage, and lower the $712 million that is passed out to shareholders who, remember, don't do any work for the company, and the owners? Or do we not raise pay and keep the top 1% fat and happy? Well, that second option doesn't have very good optics. So let's raise pay a little. Spend even more money on a PR campaign to say how great we are for doing so, and then raise prices to cover both. So no, wage increases do not have to mean price increases. They could mean less profit for the business. This can be a challenge for a mom-and-pop business. But I'd argue that even for a small business, if you can't pay your people a living wage, then your business is not a good one. Saying paying McDonald's employees more will raise the price of a burger assumes that company profits must remain the same. But they don't have to. Edit to add. Since I'm catching some flack, that financial experts have literally testified to Congress that the single biggest factor driving inflation in the past couple years has been increased profits. It's not a guess. Wages drove some. Supply chain drove some. But profits were the single biggest factor. We have lots of states that have higher minimum wage than their neighbors. McDonald's still has a $1 menu in these states. The burgers cost the same damn amount in Minnesota as they do North Dakota. But Minnesotans are making more per hour flipping them. No. Wages don't dictate prices. Demand does. Edit. To the people saying yes. If wages control the price of goods, explain why wages are pretty much the same as they have been for nearly a decade. Yet the price of most goods has doubled or more over the past 2 years. All the numbers are going up anyway. So why not pay people more? No. Prices will go up because the sellers want higher profits. Meaning, prices will go up anyway. No matter the salaries. Salaries must increase in order for people to at least afford to eat. Well, there is definitely a moment of levity before the adjustments. But I would argue because inflation exists, minimum wages should also change year over year. Maybe we need to stop thinking of it as a static number and more of a minimum purchasing power. Like minimum wage should be able rent and pay bills on a 1-bedroom in the cheaper 20% rent in your area. It isn't just how much you make that people typically complain about, it's the fact that the purchasing power of our dollar has been stripped about 9,698% since 1913. On top of that, overspending from government causes bouts of inflation which has skyrocketed during our ever-growing need to be in war. Top that off with countries now moving off of the petrodollar as a reserve currency, and we are looking to be in bad shape in the future. So my anecdote. When they were talking about raising MW in my state, the fast food people were claiming the $7 burger meal would cost $11 because of the hike. So what happened? Prices went up about 70 cents. Yes, prices at places that pay MW will rise. They rose about 12%. That said, people making MW had their wages go up 50% incrementally. So those making MW did better. Those of us who don't make MW were hurt a bit. That said, if everyone who makes MW now has 50% more, do they spend more money at fast food restaurants? Do they not call out as much because they can fix their car or go to the doctor? What about the business owners? The person who was leading the fight to keep MW where it was, claiming it wouldn't be profitable to own a fast food restaurant, broke ground on a new restaurant in the time between when the bill passed and when it went into effect. The point is that there are a lot of expenses a company has above and beyond minimum wage labor. Look at a fast food restaurant. Sure, their biggest cost might be labor, but they have rent, product cost, insurance, advertising, franchise fees, utilities, management, etc. So if labor costs go up 40% and labor is 30% of cost, prices going up 12% is about right. No, it's propaganda from corporate donors who don't pay taxes and also don't want to pay employees a livable wage. Recent inflation is driven by corporate greed. Net profits year over year in a sinking sea of wage growth. The middle class is a myth, and a fair wage should level out to whatever it takes to fill the average gas tank per hour. How about corporations just make less profit? I always point out that wages have not changed in the US. Our minimum wage is $7.25 federally and varies state to state. And prices have been steadily increasing, so wages aren't the issue. The issue is corporate corruption and capitalism. The only way to succeed under capitalism is to constantly be making more and more profits. Companies do this by suppressing wages and charging more for their goods and services, while also skipping rules and regulations whenever possible. That's why everything is more expensive and less quality. Not because workers are being paid more. Smaller companies cannot afford to pay higher than the market rate, leading to monopoly. That's why you see big companies such as Google and Amazon advocating for a minimum wage to eliminate competition. Kind of. It would increase the price of products that use a lot of low-cost labor. It would have negligible impact on costs for technology companies, because the employees are already paid more than $20. In short, it reduces inequality in the income distribution and the services people can afford. But it's not a linear relationship of add X% to the minimum wage and get X increase in quality of life or spending power. Yes and no. Frankly, prices have gone up over the last 20-30 years, while wages have not kept pace. It would be more of a reset of equilibrium. Then, we would start the whole cycle again because no one seems to learn from past mistakes. Sadly. Yes, this would happen. One of the few decent arguments against raising minimum wage. Unless the price of goods and services get regulated somehow. This would happen with a huge wage rise. Thing is, prices are currently going up way faster than wages are. Most of the people who want minimum wage raised are only trying to maintain a certain standard of living. Because the way things are going, housing and quality of life are just getting farther and farther out of reach for a low-wage worker. If the wage raise isn't too dramatic, wages can theoretically keep up with inflation without causing it to accelerate. While we're trapped in this twisted version of capitalism on meth, yes. Yes, I have been saying this since everyone started talking about raising the minimum wage. Then prices started hiking up. Then COVID hit and prices raised even more. Now all we are doing is catching up even more than we were before. Not if corporate management stops taking home 7 figures.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Eracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.